So what happens when a stock that everyone thinks is a super safe bet, a blue chip giant, suddenly takes a massive nosedive? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today with ITC. Its recent 14% plunge absolutely shocked investors. And this isn't just about one company, not at all. It's really a masterclass in market shocks, how investors react, and that super fine line between a crisis and a huge opportunity.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's New Year's Day. Most of us are recovering from the night before, but a storm was quietly brewing for ITC. And what happened next? Well, it sent a real shockwave through the entire market.
In just 2 trading days, shares of this market giant, ITC, plummeted by a staggering 14%. Now, for a company this big and this stable, a drop like that is basically a seismic event. It just doesn't happen.
And we're not talking about a little dip here. No way. This was a brutal sell-off that sent the stock spiraling down to its lowest point in 3 years. It wiped out years of gains in just a matter of hours and left a lot of investors totally scrambling for answers. So what on earth could cause such a sudden, sharp drop in a company that's usually seen as one of the safest bets out there? It wasn't a terrible earnings report. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a change in leadership. Nope. The cause was something much more direct and much more powerful. Well, the answer comes down to a single move by the government that analysts are, very appropriately, calling a tax bombshell. This thing caught the entire industry completely off guard and just immediately reset everyone's expectations for the company's future. On February 1st, the Finance Ministry announced a massive, roughly 50% jump in cigarette taxes. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't some small little change they do every year. This was a seismic shift in the financial landscape for ITC's biggest business. And to really get a sense of the shockwave this sent out, just look at this quote. When a major, seasoned analyst firm uses words like unprecedented and admits they were surprised, you know it's a huge deal. It tells you the market had absolutely not priced this in. So this tax hike creates what a lot of analysts are afraid could become a vicious cycle. Think about it. First, the taxes go way up, which forces the company to hike its prices a lot. Then, those higher prices could easily cause sales volumes to drop as people buy less. And as the legal stuff gets more expensive, it just swings the door wide open for the illegal, untaxed market to grow. That creates this negative feedback loop that has investors really worried. So yeah, this tax bombshell pretty much immediately built a very strong case for being pessimistic. The reaction from the financial world was fast, and it was overwhelmingly negative. The immediate fallout was just a wave of downgrades from brokerage firms. They saw a company being forced to make huge price hikes, which would almost certainly lead to falling sales and, maybe even worse, completely reverse all the recent progress they'd made against that illicit market. And history gives us a really worrying clue here. A few years back, during another period of tax hikes, even smaller price increases, like in the mid-teens, caused sales to drop by over 15%. Today, the required hikes are more than double that. You can see why analysts are bracing for a much, much bigger drop in sales. And to really put this scale of this challenge into perspective, check this out. Analysts at Jefferies did the math and figured ITC needs a 40% price hike just to break even from this tax increase. Think about that. That is a massive cost to pass on to your customers, and it's almost guaranteed to hit demand hard. But hold on, that's only one side of the coin. Despite all the gloom and the very real damage to its main business, some analysts are looking deeper. They're looking past the immediate crisis, and they're starting to build a case for long-term value. They're basically arguing that, yeah, the cigarette business is facing a major headwind, for sure, but the intense focus on this one negative thing might be causing the market to totally overlook the hidden value in the rest of the company. Is everyone just panicking a little too much? So, the optimistic analysts are pointing to a few key things. First, you've got a strong dividend yield of around 4%. That's a regular cash payout, which basically pays you to wait out the storm. But beyond that, they see some really good signs in ITC's other businesses, things like lower raw material costs and a recovery in their foods and paper divisions that the market seems to be completely ignoring right now. And this chart right here is the core of that long-term argument. Look, ITC isn't just a cigarette company. While tobacco is still the biggest piece of the pie, a full 40% of the business comes from this diversified portfolio of foods, paper, and other stuff. For the bulls, this is where the hidden value is. So this brings us right to the central dilemma for any investor looking at ITC today. You've got two completely valid, yet totally opposing stories playing out at the exact same time.
It's really a classic battle. On one side, you've got the bears, who see this unprecedented tax hike and the almost certain drop in sales as a clear sign to get out. But on the other side, the bulls are looking right past that short-term pain. They're focused on the strong dividend, that diversified business, and the potential for recovery in all those other parts of the company.
And that brings us right back to the question from the headline of the article this is all based on. It perfectly sums up the dilemma. Are you trying to catch a falling knife that's just going to cut you deeper? Or are you picking up a really valuable asset that the rest of the market has just thrown away in a panic? Ultimately, this is what it all boils down to. It's such a fascinating case study in how markets work, right? It's a battle between a really troubled present for the company's main cash cow and the quiet potential of its more diversified future. Which story is going to win out in the end? Well, only